The first time someone accused me of committing name theft was at my own baby shower in Austin, Texas. I was standing in the middle of my sister-in-law's living room, balloons tied to every chair, streamers drooping in the August heat, holding a slice of vanilla cake in one hand and my swollen belly in the other. My husband, Ethan, had just announced that after months of indecision, we had finally chosen a name for our baby boy. "Everyone," I said, my cheeks glowing from sugar and nerves, "we're naming him Caleb." The reaction was everything I dreamed of: applause, cheers, even a few teary claps from my grandmother. But then my eyes landed on my cousin, Derek, who was glaring at me like I had just robbed his bank account and maxed out his credit cards. He stood up so fast his chair crashed onto the hardwood floor. "You can't use that name," he barked. "I reserved it." The room went silent. I swear you could hear the ice melting in someone's mimosa glass. "Reserved it?" I repeated, my voice half laugh, half confused. "Derek, what are you talking about?" He puffed his chest like a turkey in mating season. "I've had that name spiritually claimed since 2020. Everyone knows that. It's mine." Here's the thing, Derek is 32 years old, single, and loudly child-free by choice. He once told me, straight-faced, that he couldn't stand the sound of kids' laughter because it's messed with his concentration. He hasn't had a girlfriend since college, when his high school sweetheart dumped him for mocking her weight in front of her mom. He spends his weekends playing video games in his apartment and lecturing people online about philosophy books he never actually finishes. And yet, here he was, telling a very pregnant woman that she couldn't use the name Caleb because he'd somehow locked it down, spiritually. I tried to keep things light. It was still my baby shower, after all. "Derek, it's just a name. Plenty of people share names. If you ever have kids, you can still use it." "Wrong move." His face turned red, like a cartoon thermometer about to burst. "You're stealing my legacy," he shouted. "You're sabotaging my future fatherhood." Then, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment, he whipped out his phone. "I have proof. I have the list." "The list? Oh God, the list." He shoved the screen in my face, and I swear to you, it was his notes app, filled with over 2,300 baby names. Each one numbered, each one marked reserved. My jaw dropped. My Aunt Linda, who had spent weeks planning the shower, tried to cut the tension. "Why don't we head to the cake table? There's plenty to." But Derek spun around and pointed at her like a courtroom prosecutor. "Aunt Linda, I need you to witness this. This is name fraud." He said those words out loud. Name fraud. My grandmother, bless her, leaned on her cane and whispered, "Everyone calm down, we're here to celebrate a baby." But Derek jabbed his finger in the air. "Grandma, you're enabling intellectual property theft." That's when Ethan, my sweet, conflict-avoiding husband, finally snapped. "We're naming our son Caleb," he said firmly, his voice louder than I'd ever heard. "And you can shove your imaginary list where the sun doesn't shine." The entire room gasped. Someone actually dropped a mimosa. Derek's jaw unhinged like a snake about to swallow a deer whole. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," he bellowed, already dialing his phone. "He specializes in naming rights." What kind of lawyer specializes in naming rights? That was the question echoing in my head when Derek started pacing like a mad preacher. He threw around words like emergency injunction and conceptual property like he was testifying before Congress. And then, 20 minutes later, a man walked in. He was wearing sweatpants, flip-flops, and a wrinkled t-shirt that read, "I hate this place." This was apparently Derek's old college buddy, now in law school. Derek immediately launched into his case. "She stole the name I've been planning for my firstborn son. You have to explain the legal consequences." The lawyer looked at Derek. Then at me. Then at my 7 months pregnant belly. Then at the cake table, where people were awkwardly picking at sandwiches in dead silence. His face shifted from confusion, to horror, to pity. "Derek," he said slowly, like he was explaining algebra to a golden retriever. Is this seriously why you called me? On my one day off? To argue over a baby name? Yes, Derek shouted. She's destroying my son's identity. The lawyer stared at him flatly. You don't have a son, Derek. But I will. The lawyer pinched the bridge of his nose. You're infertile, Derek. You cry about it to me every semester. The room collectively gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh, snap." My uncle actually started eating popcorn out of a decorative bowl, like he was watching a movie. The lawyer sighed. You can't reserve a name. That's not how names work. That's not how anything works. Did you honestly think you could copyright the name Caleb? Derek opened his mouth, shut it, opened it again. And even if you could, which you absolutely cannot, what kind of person ruins his pregnant cousin's baby shower over a child that doesn't exist? He turned to me, softened his tone, and said, "Congratulations. Caleb's a great name." Then he shot Derek a final glare. Lose my number. And get therapy. He walked out, leaving Derek standing there like a balloon with all the air let out. Derek pointed at me one last time, eyes blazing. I'll remember this betrayal. Then he stormed out. But I didn't realize. Derek really meant it. That night was only the beginning of a nightmare none of us were prepared for. The morning after the baby shower, I woke up groggy, my back aching from pregnancy and exhaustion. I reached for my phone and froze. 17 missed calls. All from family members. Before I could process it, the screen lit up again. Aunt Linda. Sweetheart, she blurted the moment I answered, Derek showed up at my house at 6 this morning. He brought a PowerPoint presentation about the historical significance of the name Caleb in our family. He had charts, genealogy trees, he even tried to prove great-great-uncle Charles went by Caleb, so the name belongs to the male line of succession. I stared at the wall, speechless. At 6 a.m. With a PowerPoint? Yes, she sighed. He wouldn't leave until I promised and bear witness to the theft. Ethan walked into the kitchen holding scrambled eggs. I repeated Aunt Linda's words to him. He just shook his head, muttering, "Unbelievable," as he buttered his toast. We had exactly 10 minutes of peace before my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Apparently, Derek had cornered her at the grocery store, following her through the produce aisle while ranting about how I was destroying his cosmic destiny. He compared me naming my baby Caleb to stealing someone's wedding dress the night before their ceremony. My mom eventually abandoned her shopping cart in the cereal aisle just to escape. By noon, the calls were non-stop. My cousin Jenna reported Derek had created a Facebook group called Justice for Future Baby Names and was inviting all our relatives to join. My uncle called to say Derek had shown up at his workplace during lunch with a petition for family members to sign, supporting his claim to the name. Even my grandmother called, bewildered, saying Derek had tried to convince her she'd promised him the name Caleb when he was 12. Ethan finally suggested we get out of the house to clear our heads. We drove to Zilker Park, walked the trails, and sat by the pond watching ducks paddle in the warm Texas sun. For the first time all day, I felt a little normal. Ethan even rubbed my swollen ankles while we sat on a bench. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. It was his sister, texting frantically, "Derek is at my daughter's soccer game. He's telling the other parents that you are betraying the family legacy." He brought printouts of baby name websites. We drove home, exhausted, only to find Derek's dented grey Toyota Corolla parked across the street from our driveway. He was sitting inside, windows down, eating a gas station sandwich while staring at our house. The second Ethan parked, Derek got out and started walking toward us, one hand raised like he was a peace negotiator. "Look," he said, stopping 10 feet away. "I've been up all night researching. The name Caleb means tall-hearted, it's destiny. It was meant for my future son, not yours." He started scrolling on his phone, shoving it toward us. "See these astrological charts? A child born in June wastes the power of the name. My son, he'll be born in December. It's in the stars. I clutched Ethan's arm. My heart was pounding, my breath shallow. Ethan didn't say a word, he just took my hand and walked us toward the front door. Derek followed us up the walkway, voice getting louder, more desperate. I've been preparing for fatherhood for 5 years. Parenting books, YouTube tutorials, meditation. I deserve this name more than you. You've only been trying for a year. We slipped inside and locked the door. Derek stayed on our porch for 20 minutes, occasionally knocking, occasionally shouting statistics about baby name popularity. Then, finally, his car started and drove away. That night, we ordered takeout, trying to shake it off. Just as our food arrived, Ethan's phone rang. His mom sounded panicked. "Derek's been at my house for 2 hours," she whispered. He brought a binder, 20 pages of emails where he mentioned wanting to name a son Caleb. "He wants me to convince you to give it up." Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. "I can't believe this." The next morning, my cousin Emily called. She was hosting a family barbecue that afternoon. "Heads up," she warned. "Derek RSVP'd and told everyone he has an important announcement. You might want to skip it." Ethan and I debated, but I refused to let Derek scare us away. Plus, Emily made the best potato salad in the world, and I wasn't about to miss it while 7 months pregnant. So we went. When we arrived, Derek was already there, holding court near the grill like some kind of dictator. He gestured wildly while our uncle flipped burgers with the dead-eyed expression of a man reconsidering all his life choices. The moment Derek saw us, he abandoned his audience and stormed toward us. Luckily, Emily intercepted him with a plate of deviled eggs and steered him toward the picnic tables. She mouthed sorry over her shoulder. For a while, things felt almost normal. People avoided the topic of baby names. My Aunt Susan whispered to me that Derek had called her at midnight, asking if she'd testify in court as a character witness for his fitness as a future father. But the calm didn't last. About an hour into the barbecue, Derek climbed onto a picnic bench and tapped his fork against a plastic cup. "Everyone, I have a statement to make." The yard went silent. Even the grill seemed to stop sizzling. He pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper and began reading a speech about family loyalty and sacred bonds of nomenclature. At first, people looked confused, then horrified, as it became clear he was ranting about baby names. Again. He described how he had been building a relationship with Caleb through meditation, visualization, and even sleep talking. His roommate apparently caught him whispering the name in his dreams. My cousin started drifting toward the house. Ethan stood up, but Derek ignored him, plowing ahead. "I've bought the domain name CalebDerek.com, Derek shouted. "I even opened a college savings account for him." That's when my grandmother had enough. She stood, all for feet 11 inches of her, and snapped, "Sit down and eat your hamburger before it gets cold." For a moment, Derek looked like a balloon with a slow leak. But instead of sitting, he pulled out his phone again, ready to show everyone the Pinterest board he'd made for Caleb's future nursery. That was when Emily's husband cranked up the stereo so loud it drowned Derek out. Everyone scattered. Ethan and I left early, hoping that was the end of it. But before I could climb into the car, Derek appeared at my elbow, pressing a manila envelope into my hands. Inside, he whispered, "You'll find a formal notice of name reservation, along with supporting documentation." We drove home in silence. When I finally opened the envelope, my stomach dropped. Inside were 23 pages of rambling text, dream journals about future Caleb, a list of every celebrity named Caleb, and a bizarre family tree where Derek tried to prove the name belonged exclusively to his branch. I looked at Ethan, my hands trembling. This wasn't funny anymore. Derek's obsession wasn't fading. It was growing. And we had no idea just how far he was willing to go. I thought Derek's manila envelope would be the peak of his meltdown. I was wrong. Within days, his obsession had sprouted new arms, reaching into every corner of our lives. It started small, little things that were easy to dismiss. A new Instagram account popped up, @TheRealCaleb, posting ultrasound images stolen from Google with captions like "My son, stolen before his birthright." Then he launched a GoFundMe titled Caleb's Legal Defense Fund. It raised exactly $0, but Derek proudly shared the empty page in the family group chat, calling it evidence of public support. At first, I laughed. But the laughter curdled fast. Because then he started showing up. At my prenatal appointments. The first time, I was signing in at the UBS front desk when I caught sight of him out of the corner of my eye. Sitting in the waiting room, legs crossed, with a giant framed portrait of a child he'd commissioned, what he claimed future Caleb would look like. He didn't say a word. Just sat there, holding the painting in his lap, staring. The receptionist's eyes darted between us nervously. I whispered, "That's my cousin. Please don't let him follow me back." From then on, Ethan started taking time off work to come with me. His boss was understanding, but I could see the strain on Ethan's face every time he explained why. Who would believe this? Who could? It was around then that something inside me cracked, a memory I hadn't thought of in years resurfaced, like it had been waiting for this exact storm. I was 12 again, standing in my middle school cafeteria with a tray of food, when a girl named Melissa Tate yanked the seat out from under me before I Saturday. I landed hard, lunch spilling everywhere. Everyone laughed. Melissa smirked and said, "Sorry, but I've reserved this seat since 5th grade. You knew that." Even then, I hadn't cried. I just gathered my tray, red-faced, and found another table. But the humiliation clung to me, the idea that someone could declare ownership over something that was never theirs to begin with. And now, decades later, Derek was Melissa, but amplified, unhinged, armed with PowerPoints and petitions. It wasn't just my pregnancy he was trying to take over. It was my dignity. The family started fracturing. Some relatives quietly unfriended him online. Others, confused by his persistence, weren't sure what to believe. He tailored his arguments for different audiences. To the sentimental ones, he talked about family legacy. To the practical ones, he showed charts of name popularity trends, warning how my baby would be just another Caleb in a sea of Calebs. Then came the barbecue incident that turned from awkward to frightening. We'd agreed to go, hoping to reclaim some normalcy. But Derek made his move halfway through dessert. He climbed onto the picnic table, holding his phone high like a preacher holding scripture. "I have proof," he shouted. "I've been spiritually bonded to Caleb since 2020. Before anyone could stop him, he connected his phone to Emily's smart TV on the patio. Suddenly, a slideshow filled the screen, screenshots of his notes app, voice memos where he whispered the name Caleb in different tones, even selfies of him cradling that painted portrait like it was his child. My blood ran cold. Little cousins giggled nervously. My grandmother clutched her pearls. Ethan started toward him, but Derek stepped back and raised his hand like a traffic cop. "Don't silence me. You've already stolen from me once." The slideshow rolled on, and then the audio changed. Derek had recorded himself crying, whispering, "Don't worry, Caleb. Daddy's coming for you. Daddy won't let them steal you away." That was when people started leaving. One by one, folding chairs scraped against concrete. The party broke apart like smoke. I wanted to leave too, but Derek cut me off on the sidewalk as Ethan helped me into the car. "Open this," he hissed, shoving another envelope into my hands. Inside, a scrapbook. Every time he'd texted me the word Caleb. Every social media comment he'd ever made with the name. Every single birthday card he'd signed since 2018 with the words "Future Dad of Caleb." All highlighted, annotated, preserved. The sheer effort made my skin crawl. Weeks, months, years of obsession, documented like a detective building a case. That night, I sat awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my hand resting on my belly. My son kicked, tiny feet pressing against me, and I whispered, "Your name is yours. No matter what he does, it's yours." But I didn't believe myself. Because Derek wasn't slowing down. The following weekend, Ethan's firm hosted a casual networking brunch at a country club. I waddled in on Ethan's arm, grateful for a chance to feel like a normal couple again. But 10 minutes into small talk, a commotion near the buffet caught my attention. And my blood turned to ice. Derek. He'd somehow talked his way past the front desk, wearing a thrift store blazer and carrying a binder labeled The Caleb Legacy Project. He cornered Ethan in the break room, spreading out fake genealogical documents and photoshopped proof that the name belonged exclusively to his bloodline. His voice rose louder, his hand shaking as co-workers looked on in horror. Security escorted him out while he clutched his binder like a Bible. When Ethan returned, his face was pale, his jaw set. "He humiliated me at work," he whispered. "I'm done." That was the first time I saw real fury in my husband's eyes. But Derek wasn't done. He was only getting started. And the worst was still waiting for us, at a wedding, of all places. By the time summer rolled around, I was 8 months pregnant and so worn down by Derek's antics that even my dreams weren't safe. Every night, I'd hear his voice in my sleep, "You stole Caleb. You'll pay for this." But nothing prepared me for what happened at my cousin Margaret's wedding. She'd begged Derek ahead of time, "Please, just one day. Don't bring up the name thing. Don't ruin this for me." She even seated us at opposite ends of the reception hall, thinking distance might save the peace. For a while, it seemed to work. Derek sat quietly during the ceremony, clutching a flask but keeping his mouth shut. I actually started to relax, my hand resting on my belly while Ethan whispered, "We might survive this." But receptions are where Derek thrives. Add an open bar, and he becomes a tornado in human form. The disaster struck during the open toast portion of the evening. One cousin gave a heartfelt speech about love. Another cracked jokes about Margaret and her new husband. People laughed, cheered, raised glasses. Then Derek stood up. He walked calmly to the DJ booth, yanked the microphone out of its stand, and said, "I have something important to say about family loyalty." I swear the entire room groaned in unison. At first, people thought he was joking. But then he launched into a speech about the sacred responsibility of naming rights, how some families honored tradition while others committed spiritual theft. The bride's face crumpled. Her groom looked like he wanted to tackle Derek off the stage. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd go into labor right then and there. The DJ tried to cut him off, but Derek had unplugged the mic from the system. Portable now, he strutted through the reception hall like a politician on the campaign trail, addressing people by name as he went. "Aunt Linda," he shouted, shoving the microphone in her face, "do you want to be part of a family that honors spiritual claims? Or one that condones theft?" She shrank back, mortified. Then he turned toward my table. His eyes locked on me. "And you," he hissed. "You sit there, glowing, pretending you're innocent. But you know the truth. You're a thief." Gasps rippled through the room. Margaret was openly crying now, mascara streaking her face. Her new in-laws whispered furiously among themselves. Strangers from the groom's side stared at us like we'd wandered out of a circus. And then, God help us all, Derek pulled out his phone. "I've prepared a presentation," he announced. He connected it to the reception hall projector, and suddenly a PowerPoint lit up the screen behind the bridal party. Slide 1, the Caleb Legacy, a timeline. Slide 2, screenshots of text messages where he'd mentioned the name. Slide 3, a family tree he'd drawn himself, circled in red to prove direct inheritance of nomenclature. The guests didn't know whether to laugh or call the cops. My uncle muttered, "This is like watching a train wreck in real time." Ethan stood up, fists clenched, but several cousins grabbed him, hissing, "Not here, not at the wedding." Finally, the groom snapped. He marched to Derek, ripped the mic out of his hand, and barked, "Sit down, or get out." But the damage was done. Margaret's wedding video will forever include Derek's wild-eyed manifesto about stolen baby names. When Ethan and I finally slipped out early, I sat in the passenger seat clutching my belly, silent tears sliding down my cheeks. Ethan's jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Something inside him shifted that night. For months, he'd tried to stay calm, keep the peace, laugh it off. But at that wedding, with everyone staring at us like we were accomplices to Derek's madness, something in him hardened. He looked at me at a red light and said, "This ends. One way or another, I'm done letting him control our lives." I didn't ask what he meant. I was too exhausted to care. But Derek wasn't finished. Because 3 nights later, as I lay in bed with contractions starting, I got the text that shattered whatever hope I had left. It was from a cousin at the hospital. "Derek's here. He says he has to witness the birth." He brought the painting again. I felt the world tilt beneath me. My water broke. Ethan grabbed the hospital bag. And as he drove us into the night, I couldn't stop shaking. My son was about to enter the world. And Derek was waiting for him. My water broke 3 days after Margaret's ruined wedding. Ethan drove like a bat out of hell through Austin, one hand gripping the wheel, the other clutching mine. Every contraction felt like a countdown. But instead of just focusing on labor, I had to hear from relatives texting frantically, "Derek's at the hospital. He says he has to be part of it." When we arrived, the nurses already knew. Ethan had shown them photos of Derek and explained everything. Security stationed themselves at the maternity ward entrance. Still, Derek found a way in. While I labored for 14 hours, he sat in the waiting room with that damned painting propped on a chair beside him, live tweeting the theft of his son. He used phrases like cosmic deadline and spiritual birthright violation. At one point, he even posted a countdown, "For hours left before my legacy is stolen." Security finally asked him to leave when other families complained. He argued the whole way out, clutching the portrait like a life raft. When Caleb was finally born, healthy, perfect, red-faced and screaming, relief washed through me. For a moment, it was just the 3 of us in the hospital room, Ethan crying as he whispered, "His hours. He's safe." But the storm outside hadn't passed. Within 2 hours of our birth announcement trickling through the family, Derek launched a website, Justice for the Real Caleb. The homepage featured his painting beside a manifesto about betrayal and theft. He bought 6 Caleb-related domain names, trying to corner the internet on my baby's name. When we brought our son home, Derek wasn't far behind. That very first night, our garage door lit up in giant letters. He had rented projection equipment and plastered our house with phrases like "The real Caleb deserves better" and "Name fraud family." Neighbors came out to watch like it was some kind of drive-in movie. Ethan called the cops, but Derek was on public property, technically within his rights. The officers shrugged and suggested filing for a restraining order. By then, my milk supply was faltering from stress. My pediatrician blamed hormones, but I knew the truth: Derek was poisoning my peace. Family tried to help. Cousins rotated shifts at our house to intercept him. They'd catch him lurking in his car, snapping photos of packages on our porch. Once, he even showed up with a mobile notary, demanding I sign documentation relinquishing the name Caleb. The notary took one look at the situation, refused, and bolted. It escalated again when Derek began calling our pediatrician's office, pretending to be Ethan, trying to get medical information about Caleb. That was the breaking point for Ethan. He moved us to a different practice across town, with password-protected pickups. I started to feel like a prisoner in my own life. Every decision, what grocery store to visit, what park to walk in, was weighed against the possibility of Derek appearing. And yet, the more unhinged Derek became, the more the family began to unite. The turning point came at a family reunion, one we didn't attend but heard about later. My grandmother, frail at 91 but still the matriarch, gathered everyone in the church basement. She laid it out plain: if you continue enabling Derek, you're out. No weddings, no birthdays, no Christmas. Choose. One by one, relatives distanced themselves. Distant cousins who had once humored Derek suddenly remembered they had their own lives. The support dried up. That's when Derek pivoted. He filed paperwork to legally change his own name. Ethan and I went to the courthouse the day of his hearing, not to fight him, but to witness it. Derek wore a new suit, clutching his leather portfolio of evidence. He kept glancing at us, clearly expecting us to object. But we didn't. The judge, stone-faced, asked the standard questions, then approved it without ceremony. Just like that, Derek became Caleb. He walked out clutching the decree like it was a championship trophy. But instead of triumph, his expression flickered with confusion when he saw us smiling faintly. Because in a strange way, his name change freed us. From then on, family gatherings included 2 Calebs. Ours, the baby. And Derek, now insisting on being called Caleb Sr. The younger cousins thought it was hilarious, dubbing them Big Caleb and Little Caleb. Even Grandma leaned into it, patting my baby's head while saying, "My Caleb," then turning to Derek with a flat, "and the other one." For the first time in months, I laughed without guilt. At Caleb's first birthday party, Derek showed up on time, brought a gift, and, for once, acted almost normal. He even held my son briefly for a family photo, no speech, no drama, just a man holding his cousin's baby. When he left, he thanked us for including him. That night, after we cleaned up wrapping paper and stacked toys, Ethan whispered, "I think it's over." Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Derek still lives in Austin, still introduces himself as Caleb. He even printed business cards, Caleb Morrison, Sr. But the fire in his eyes is gone. It's like he finally built himself a world where he could be who he always wanted to be. And me? I tuck my son in every night and whisper his name, Caleb, as if saying it enough times could cleanse it of all the chaos. Because here's the truth, names aren't property. They aren't inheritance. They're gifts, chosen and given with love. And no matter what Derek believes, my son will grow up knowing his name was never stolen. It was his. From the very beginning.